Welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night, dear viewer. Tonight, I will be telling some terrifyingly scary stories. Make sure to leave your feedback on the comments so I can make this the best experience for you. And if you have any stories you would like me to tell, you can send them through the link in the description. Let's begin. Story 1. In the year 1867, in a quaint town shrouded in a heavy mist, stood an ancient Catholic church. It had long been a beacon of solace and spiritual guidance for the townsfolk. But little did they know that within its hallowed walls, a malevolent force lay dormant, waiting to unleash its horrors upon the world. Rumors and whispers of a demonic entity had circulated among the villagers for years, but their fears were dismissed as mere superstitions. However, as time passed, inexplicable phenomena began to occur within the church's sacred confines. Shadows danced in unholy patterns, whispers echoed through empty pews, and an aura of malevolence permeated the air. The town's residents, filled with trepidation and a desire to protect their beloved church, banded together to confront the sinister force that threatened their sanctuary. Armed with rosaries and crosses, they gathered one fateful night to perform an exorcism, hoping to banish the demonic entity that had taken root. As the incantations began and the air grew heavy with anticipation, the very foundations of the church seemed to tremble. The entity, awakened from its slumber, fought back with a ferocity that surpassed anything the villagers had anticipated. The battle waged on, but their efforts proved futile against the ancient and relentless evil. One by one, the brave souls who had ventured into the church were struck down by the demonic entity's unholy power. Their anguished screams filled the sacred space as they were torn, their souls devoured by the insatiable darkness. The townspeople, overwhelmed by despair, realized that their struggle was in vain. Fear consumed the once devout followers, and they made the agonizing decision to abandon the church. They sealed its doors, trapping the malevolent entity within its unholy sanctuary. The once vibrant house of worship stood as a forsaken monument, forgotten by time and swallowed by darkness. Years turned into decades, and the church became a haunting reminder of the horrors that lurked within. Whispers spread among the villagers, warning future generations to never approach the forsaken building, lest they too fall victim to the demonic entity's insidious hunger. However, curiosity and the desire for answers are powerful motivators, and there were those who could not resist the allure of the forbidden. Decades later, a group of daring explorers ventured into the abandoned church, their hearts pounding with a mix of trepidation and morbid curiosity. As they stepped over the threshold, the air grew thick with an oppressive malevolence. The darkness seemed to seep into their souls, fueling their fear. They ventured deeper, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls, unaware of the fate that awaited them. One by one, the explorers became ensnared in the demonic entity's sinister trap. It toyed with them, whispering ancient incantations and distorting their perceptions until they were driven to madness. Their screams of terror echoed through the desecrated church, a tragic symphony of doomed souls. The demonic entity had prevailed once again, its power growing with each sacrifice it claimed. The abandoned Catholic church remained a desolate, cursed place, its unholy secrets forever entombed within its walls. And so the tale of the forsaken church endured, a haunting legend whispered by those who dared speak its name. The demonic entity's hunger remained unsated, its evil perpetually waiting, ready to consume the souls of anyone foolish enough to cross its threshold. Story 2. I want to share a bone-chilling story that unfolded a few years ago, when I found myself living in a small, run-down apartment in the heart of Mumbai, India. It was an experience that began innocently enough, but quickly spiraled into a nightmare of the supernatural. When I first stumbled upon the apartment listing, I couldn't believe my luck. The rent was unbelievably affordable, and as a hard skeptic when it came to supernatural tales, I brushed off the rumors that circulated about the place being haunted. I thought I had stumbled upon a hidden gem, unaffected by the fantastical stories that often accompanied such cheap accommodations. However, it didn't take long for my skepticism to waver. In the beginning, it was the subtle things that caught my attention. Objects would inexplicably shift from their original positions, and the air within the apartment seemed to possess a strange heaviness, as if something lingered just beyond my line of sight. As time went on, the occurrences became more pronounced, and a sense of unease settled within me. Strange sounds would echo through the halls at odd hours, whispers that I couldn't quite make out. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I would wake up to find the apartment enveloped in an eerie silence, as if the very walls held their breath. But it was the shadows that truly sent a chill down my spine. They seemed alive, moving with a life of their own. At first, I dismissed them as figments of my imagination, mere tricks of the light. But as the days wore on, I couldn't ignore their persistence. They would dance across the walls, slithering like serpents, and their elongated forms seemed to twist and contort in the most unnerving manner. Sleep became a precious commodity, as each night brought with it a new terror. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest, only to find myself paralyzed with fear. It felt as if an invisible presence watched over me, its gaze piercing through the darkness. The encounters became more tangible, more malevolent. I would catch fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure in the corner of my eye, but whenever I turned to face it directly, it would evaporate like smoke. The air grew heavy with a sense of foreboding, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being toyed with, that something unseen was lurking in the shadows, just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Doubt and unease gnawed at my sanity, and I found myself seeking solace in the rational explanations. I scoured the internet for logical reasons behind these phenomena, desperately clinging to the hope that I could debunk the haunting that seemed to envelop my life. Yet, the more I delved into the subject, the more I realized that I was not alone in my experiences. Tales of a dark history surrounding the apartment began to surface, whispered among the neighbors and hidden in the forgotten corners of the internet. According to the rumors, the apartment building had once been home to a sinister cult whose rituals and practices had left a stain on the very fabric of the place. Stories of strange occurrences, unexplained deaths, and tormented souls plagued the building's history. It seemed that I had unknowingly stepped into a realm where the veil between the living and the dead was dangerously thin. Haunted by these revelations, I reached out to spiritual healers and priests in a desperate attempt to find solace and resolution. They performed their rituals, burning incense and chanting ancient prayers, hoping to cleanse the apartment of its dark past. But their efforts proved fruitless. If anything, the entity's presence grew more palpable, consuming my every waking moment. It was as if the failed exorcisms had angered the malevolent force, causing it to retaliate with even greater intensity. Sleep became an elusive and terrifying ordeal. The nights turned into a battleground for my sanity, as I would lie in bed, paralyzed by fear, unable to escape the clutches of the unseen entity that haunted my every thought. The darkness seemed to come alive, whispering secrets I couldn't decipher, and the air grew thick with an oppressive energy that suffocated my very being. In my quest for relief, I sought refuge at the homes of friends and family, desperate to find respite from the unrelenting torment. Even in those temporary sanctuaries, the presence lingered in my mind, a constant reminder of the haunting that awaited my return. The mental pressure and fear began to take a toll on my well-being. Anxiety and sleep deprivation became my constant companions, shadows that followed me wherever I went. I was haunted not only by the spectral entity, but also by the weight of my own skepticism, as I grappled with the terrifying reality of the supernatural. Days turned into weeks, and the apartment became a prison, a place I dreaded returning to. But escaping its clutches was not as simple as packing my belongings and walking away. It seemed that the negative force that resided within those walls had other plans, orchestrating a series of events to thwart my every attempt at liberation. Whenever I made arrangements to move out, obstacles would suddenly arise, causing delays and cancellations. Movers would fail to show up, trucks would break down, and even friends who had volunteered to assist me would fall victim to mysterious illnesses. It was as if the entity wanted me to remain trapped, a prisoner within its realm of darkness. Faced with these relentless challenges, I resorted to extreme measures. I sought the assistance of spiritual mediums, hoping that they could provide a means of escape. They performed rituals of protection, calling upon ancient forces to shield me from the malevolent entity's grasp. But even their expertise and guidance were no match for the sheer power of the haunting. In a final act of desperation, I sought refuge at a friend's place, vowing never to return to the apartment that had become a living nightmare. It was there, in the safety of another home, that I began to rebuild my shattered psyche, seeking solace and regaining some semblance of normalcy. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The memory of the haunting still haunted my thoughts, but its intensity slowly waned as I distanced myself from the source of the terror. The sleep paralysis and menacing shadows became distant, echoes of a nightmare that I had escaped. I often wondered what had caused the apartment to become a breeding ground for such darkness. Perhaps it was a convergence of forgotten tragedies, a vortex of negative energy that fed on the fears and vulnerabilities of those who dared to reside within its walls. The answers remained elusive, buried deep within the annals of the building's history. To this day, I carry the scars of that harrowing experience. It taught me the fragility of our sense of security and the existence of forces beyond our comprehension. The escape was a hard-fought battle, one that left me mentally drained and forever changed. The wounds may have healed, but the memories serve as a constant reminder of the unseen terrors that exist just beyond the veil of our everyday lives. Story 3. I honestly don't know where to start or if I'm ready to be posting this story of mine, but hopefully, it'll help. I know you won't believe me, and honestly, I won't even blame you guys. It still doesn't make sense in my own head. I've heard stories about unknown creatures in woods, but never thought I'd encounter one myself. You know, I posted another story about some creepy old people that I had encountered in the woods. But that's nothing. This makes a good horror story for people, but it eats me every day. But here we go. I love to go hiking. I go with my 3-year-old German Shepherd, and I let her go unleashed since we like to go to secluded places. Now, I have been hiking all over Utah mountains and wanted a new hike that wasn't too far from me. I have an app that tells me about hikes near me, if it is a hard hike reviews, and if it's dog friendly. Now, I was scrolling through All Trail, looking for possibly something new, but I wasn't too hopeful. But to my delight, there was something new. I don't know why I don't remember the name of it, but I do remember it was at the bottom of the list and it had one review saying, "Good." I thought that was kind of strange, mostly because people love to review hikes and try to tell the city what they can do to improve the hike and make it safer. But I figured it wasn't a popular hike. So the next day, Kyrie and I packed up our stuff and went up towards the hike. I always carry a first aid kit. Extra food, a knife, and just emergency stuff in case I get lost. It's important to mention now that Kyrie eats a raw diet, meaning she eats raw meat, not cooked. And since we were going so early in the morning, I thought I could bring some with us. I put it in her blue backpack that I make her wear and decided that when it was getting warmer, we would stop to eat. Where I live, there's a long drive through the canyon and many roads going towards the hike you'd like to go on. This one was a little further than I'm used to, but I didn't care. It was new, and I was excited. So was Kyrie. She cries in the car until we get there. Now, I was following the directions on my phone and saw that it had led me towards a thin road that was hidden. No wonder I haven't heard of this place. It was hidden and far up the mountain. The road only fit one car, so the whole time I was so anxious that another car would come down and how I would handle that. But there never was. I never saw another car. When I got to the parking lot, if I could call it that, I noticed there was only space for like 3 cars, all in a tight space. It was small, so I decided to park my car with the front facing towards the road. I thought maybe it was private property. Checked the app, but it didn't say anything about private property. I shrugged it off, got Kyrie out, prepared us, and saw the trail. Now, even though I knew there wasn't anyone parked there, I kept Kyrie on a leash. I didn't know if there were bikers along the trail, but after 30 minutes or so, when I didn't see anyone, I decided to let her off the leash. It was a steep hike for the first half, but it was beautiful. We were deep in the woods, and I felt at peace. I used to wear headphones when I hiked, but didn't anymore, so I was enjoying the natural sounds of the forest. It was still early in the morning, so I wore a light jacket and decided when it got warmer, I'd give Kyrie her breakfast. Now, before you start to hate, I know bringing Kyra's raw meat was absolutely stupid and ignorant of me. I had never seen a bear or wolf, or anything, so I got cocky and just thought it was okay. I learned my lesson the bad day, so no need to tell me I was dumb. But honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you commented that. Now, here's where we begin the bad part of this story. The trail finally stopped being steep and sort of an easy hike from here. When you got to the top, you could see through the trees a beautiful open meadow. On the other side of it, you can hear a river and a waterfall. The trail went around the meadow. The meadow was absolutely beautiful with the mountains in the background, the sound of the water. This hike was almost the most beautiful one I had ever been to. When Kyrie and I were sort of in the center of the meadow, she stopped right in front of me and looked towards the meadow. Kyrie always walked ahead of me, and when she stopped, I stopped since I trusted her judgment. Before I could look, the smell hit me first. You know, the typical rotting smell, but oh my God. Words cannot explain how bad it stank. It burned my nose and started to make me tear up. I put my shirt over my nose, feeling nauseous, and looked over to where Kyrie was looking. In the middle of the meadow was a deer. Now I've only seen does, but never a male deer in person, but his antlers were huge. Have you ever seen Princess Mononoke? When he sees the deer spirit walking across the water and how big his antlers were? Almost like that. The beauty of the deer was amazing, but not enough to take away the disgusting smell that was making me sick. The deer was looking towards the mountains and away from me. I thought maybe Kyra's food was going bad. I checked that and it seemed fine. When I looked up again, the deer was looking towards our direction. I noticed that Kyra's hackles went up at that. She started to cry nervously. Now I've heard of Wendigos and skinwalkers. I am Native American. It is common for these creatures to be in our childhood stories. That, and also listening to scary stories on YouTube. Now when Kyrie did that, I got a bad feeling in my stomach despite the sickness. It was a Wendigo, and I knew that. Now I didn't know what to do. These creatures were only a part of my stories to make me go to bed, not to instructions of what to do. Plus, my grandmother was the one with the stories and passed away. She was the one with the experience, not my mom or anyone else. I glanced at Kyrie again when she cried and looked back towards the creature. It started to stand on its hind legs. Holy hell, it was fucking tall, and it faced my direction. It started to walk towards me. I was going to run until I heard in my head, I am one of this land. Suddenly, it started to run towards me. Full speed. I screamed, called Kyrie, and started to run. Kyrie was following behind me. I started to cry as I was running since I could hear it catch up to me. It was loud. It was destroying everything it came in contact with to get to me. The adrenaline running through me was making me just focus on running. I didn't know where to go. I just ran. The trail suddenly got smaller and bushes with thorns started to appear. But I didn't feel them as they cut my arms. As I heard it got closer, it suddenly went to the left as I ran straight. I somehow had the balls to look back to see it was gone, but also Kyrie. Kyrie, I said. But right as I called out for her, the trail ended with a foot drop onto a patch of rocks. I hit my head, bleeding a bit. But again, I couldn't feel it that much, and just got up. I looked towards the forest when I suddenly heard a loud cry from my right. It was Kyrie. Kyrie, I cried out. I stood up crying and lost at what to do. I looked back to see a river leading up to the waterfall I heard. Suddenly, a heavy weight ran into me, and we both fell back. I hit my head again on the back, and looked up to see Kyrie. Kyrie had blood all over her. It was pouring from her neck. Kyrie, I cried out. She was whimpering and breathing heavy. She still had her backpack on with some cuts in it. Before I had a chance to help her, a scream came from the forest. I looked back at the waterfall, and somehow had the strength to pick up my 85-pound dog and carry her. I don't know where I was planning to go. I was just running to the waterfall as if it was a safe place. I was almost there when I heard the creature land on the rocks that I did early. I tripped at that and looked back to see it looking at me. Its eyes were black. Or I think so. It could also be that there wasn't anything in there. I don't know. I took off Kyrie's backpack and threw it towards the monster, hoping it would take the meat and just leave us alone. I was scooting back towards the waterfall, crying as I did so, holding and dragging Kyrie with my left arm. I found that being so close to the creature made me literally weak to my knees. It walked over to me, taking huge steps. It looked so different than before. Before it looked like a deer, and now as it crawled over to me, it looked like a monster. I don't know how else to describe this awful demon. I don't. I'm sorry, but I felt water hit my head hard as I had reached the waterfall. I kept going until I was up against the wall. There barely enough space where water wasn't hitting Kyrie and his faces. Kyrie felt limp at this point. I could somewhat see the creature through the water, but still saw it coming towards me. It stood on its hind legs when it was close enough to me, watching me. The smell was so disgusting, I couldn't help but throw up in my mouth. It reached its arms out to grab me. I screamed so loud. I actually lost my voice. After I let out that scream, another scream came from the deep forest. The creature snapped its head almost completely backward, looking towards the scream. The scream sounded like the one this one had let out earlier. I was still holding on to Kyrie, crying and screaming, since its arm was close. It looked back to me, pulling its arm away, and again said in my mind, I am the one of this land. With that, it took steps back watching me and went down the riverbank. It crawled on all fours, stopping next to Kyrie's backpack. It ripped it apart and pulled out the meat, eating it with the plastic bag that it was in. It suddenly screamed and ran towards that direction of the scream from earlier. When I thought it was gone, I stood up shakily and carried Kyrie towards the trail again. When I was running, I came across my backpack that I had left earlier and stopped. It was ripped apart, so I took off my jacket and wrapped it around Kyrie's neck, where she was bleeding a lot. After that, I barely remember. All I remember is carrying Kyrie and driving down, screaming the whole way towards the emergency vet. They asked us what happened, and I told them it was a bear. They called the ambulance since I had blood all over me, and they couldn't tell if it was mine or Kyrie's. Kyrie made it through surgery and had to have some stitches on her, along with a pad. It didn't really heal, and a huge bump grew on there. It had been infected, but eventually got better. She also had a bite mark on the top of her left eye, but that healed much better. They pulled out a 4-inch tooth. I don't have it because I couldn't even look at it, but they declared it from a bear, even though they said it looked weird. While I was waiting for Kyrie, I went to look up the trail on the app, and it was gone. Why or how, but it is. I don't remember where it is either. That's all a blur. I have some pictures up of Kyrie. The one with my niece is a hike my mom took her on with my niece. It had been weeks after, and my mom thought to try and help her through it. Kyrie looks nervous in the picture, but you can see the huge bump on the left side of her neck. There's also a picture with Kyrie and her bandages around her neck. And the one that is the most recent of her neck. It's black. The stitches came out. The last picture is of the top of her head. Also black, but it's healed now. I'll find some way to post them. I haven't been hiking since, and I refuse to let Kyrie go. That time, my mom took her. She did it while I was at work, but regretted it because she said Kyrie was crying and was so scared they had to just go home. My mom knows. I screamed at night from nightmares for a week or two. My mom put white candles in my room to get rid of the bad spirits attracted to my negativity. So, yeah, here's my story. I've heard stories where people saw a Wendigo and they didn't get harmed. And God, I wish I went through that. I hate hiking. My therapist thinks I may have some peats but only knows of it as a bear. I'm getting through it. Kyrie is too. Hopefully one day I can go back. But I don't see that being for a while. Please, if you're going to go up to the mountains, please prepare. Mother Nature is not only unpredictable, but has things in there that just don't make sense in our heads. So please be safe. I say that with serious sincerity